For years, China, in spite of its vast land and population, was a mystery. Now, in the 21st century, it's regularly before our eyes, with its huge economy, its amazing Olympics, its manned space flights, and its increasing world influence. But what is life like for the ordinary person, and especially for the ordinary Christian? 100 years ago in China, it was not illegal to be a Christian, but in 1949, Chairman Mao declared China to be a communist state and began to persecute every form of religious practice. During the Cultural Revolution, which lasted from 1966 to 76, all religious activity was outlawed. Missionaries had been ejected in the 1950s, but now Chinese Christians and churches became major targets. As a result, it was believed that the Chinese church was finished. However, the social and economic policies of that Cultural Revolution were equally disastrous. By the time Mao died in 1976, China's economy was in tatters. As a result, they had to introduce new policies called the Four Modernizations, and those policies forced the country to reopen its doors internationally. And what the world saw at that point was not a dead church, but one that was exploding at an unprecedented rate. In the 15 years following the end of the Cultural Revolution, China's church grew from an estimated 1 million to an estimated 50 million believers. And most of its growth happened in the countryside and in rural communities where at that time 80% of China's population lived. This growth was marked and fueled by miraculous experiences and by incredibly courageous preaching of the gospel. We in AMCCSM had already begun to support the church at this point, and we could see that the believers faced two huge challenges. Firstly, persecution. Believers were persecuted and were often fined, beaten, imprisoned, and sometimes even killed for their faith. Secondly, a lack of Christian teaching. The legacy of the Cultural Revolution was an absence of teachers and training facilities. Believers were coming to Christ in great numbers and sharing their faith, but had no one to teach them and often had no Bibles, so error and heresy could quickly strike. Our role at that time was to provide teaching materials and training for leaders, which we did, secretly printing and distributing for free amongst the underground churches materials that went right across the land of China. Today, 2 decades later, the Chinese church has continued to grow at a similar pace and is now estimated to number around 100 million believers. And there have been incredible stories of the way God is using His ordinary people to build His church in extraordinary ways in China. But with this growth, the old challenges have remained and new ones have developed. Even today, with such an open market and international community, it is still officially illegal to practice the Christian faith except in the government-controlled official churches. Believers are still arrested and imprisoned, and sometimes fined up to a year's wages for attending unregistered churches. There is still a huge need for training to raise up more who can teach the Bible. With 7 million new believers every year, the need for teachers and teaching materials far outstrips the supply that is currently being provided. Books are received by believers with both joy and with disappointment because they want more. And there are new challenges. There's the two different faces of China, the socialist China and the capitalist China. There is also a massive gap between the China of the countryside and the China of the cities. And the church faces challenges from these differences every day. In the countryside, as the gospel explodes, yet there is still a huge need for humanitarian help in orphanages, in rural and marginalized communities, amongst minority peoples, and with the poor. At the same time, there's the urban challenge of China. There are 30 cities whose population are over 1 million people. And the economic drive and materialism there mask huge spiritual hunger. At the same time, the church is struggling to find its place and needs a different model from that which has worked so well in the countryside in China. So modern China presents huge possibilities for foreigners to integrate successfully, and the response to the gospel as they do in such circumstances is sometimes incredible. Whether in rural communities or in bustling cities, there are opportunities for ordinary believers, people like you and me, to partner with what God is doing in China, to become involved there, and to play our small part in the extraordinary things that God is doing. That's all we wanted to say. A simple story of ordinary people making a difference. Ordinary people like you, ordinary people like me. That's the amazing thing about China. There's so many opportunities. There's orphans and the poor, there's the church, there's teaching English to students, just so many thrilling things where God can take us, even though we're just ordinary people, to make a difference. Somebody came to me recently, and they're very successful in their professional career, and twice in the course of the conversation said to me, I want to do something that makes a difference. Isn't that thrilling? When God puts that desire in our hearts. See, Paul says in Ephesians 2 that we are God's masterpiece. Amazing. But He's created that masterpiece to do the good works that He's prepared for us to do. In other words, God has put that engine into us that we can really make a difference. And as I say, China's the place to do it. We've been doing that for 21 years in AMCCSM, and it's amazing how God can use us. So we're going to be there. We'd love to see you there. How about it?